Hey everybody, how are you doing? It is 10:03 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I am in my lovely Brooklyn apartment in New York City. There is a thunderstorm and lightning happening outside, and we are going to have yet another one of our great late night chats. So glad you're here. We're live on Rumble, we're live on Facebook, and we're live on the YouTube. Let's do it.
Spoken of the American century. I say that the century on which we are entering can be and must be the century of the common man.
A radical redistribution of economic power.
I mean, we know that racism is just a byproduct of capitalism. Everything would be all right if everything was put back in the hands of the people.
We need a government that will make sure Americans are taken care of and organize the economy to serve the people, not the profits of a wealthy few.
We now have the techniques and the resources to get rid of poverty.
We got to start getting out there with the people.
Get out of the movement and get to the masses.
We need a government of action.
Welcome, everybody. So good to be here with all of you tonight. The way we're doing things is the same way we always do them, which is I give my opening remarks, which is what I'm doing right now. And while the opening remarks are happening, you all are thinking of questions, and you are sending me those questions via Rumble Rants on the Rumble, or you're sending me those questions via super chats, which you can't send on YouTube because we've been demonetized. So you're sending them to me on Cash App. Caleb Maupin 22. The way that you can send questions can be sent as Rumble Rants or to Cash App Caleb Maupin 22. That is the way that we can receive questions. Rumble Rants or Cash App Caleb Maupin 22. So that's the way it works. And it's the second half of the show and your questions that make everything what it is. So by all means, ask me some good questions in the second half of the channel. Good times. I spent the weekend in DC. I'll tell you about that a little bit. And I got a couple things to talk about. I always think it's better to stream than not stream. Peter was going to stream tonight. And I figured I was tired from my trip. And I'm, as you can see, my face is red with allergies. And, I figured I wouldn't stream because I'd let Peter stream. Didn't want to compete with Peter. And I just wanted to rest. But Peter ended up not streaming tonight. I figured, you know what? I can stream, so why not? It's lightning. I don't know if you just saw that. There was some lightning, and it's springtime and allergy season and all of that. But I'm here with all of you because talking to you all always generally inspires me. I like being here with all of you. We're going to have yet another great late night conversation. And I'm glad that we can do that. Now, I did want to mention that we do have two important things that you should be aware of. Actually, really, three important things that you should. Four important. Five. No, I'm just kidding. We have a couple things. The first thing to be aware of is coming up in April. April 19th. I'm going to be in Los Angeles. I don't normally get to Los Angeles, don't get out to California that often, but we're having a workshop in the Los Angeles area. It's going to be absolutely awesome. Dan is very excited about it, and I am very excited about it. That is in April. It's going to be tremendous. It's going to be great, and I am really, really looking forward to it. So I hope that you will join us out there. It's going to be good. Timoshenko, he sent a super chat via Cash App for what I was gonna announce anyway, which is coming up. don't worry, Tim. We will announce that. I was already planning to announce that. But yeah, join us in Los Angeles, April 19th. In order to come, you need to register. Links are down below in the description. You can also use that QR code. On top of that, the biggest event of the year is going to be our upcoming convention. It will be the biggest event we have ever had as the Center for Political Innovation. We have never had a bigger event. We are going to fill that auditorium with 400 people in Chicago, July 12th, 2025. It's going to be absolutely awesome. It's going to be tremendous. I am really, really excited about it. I'm headed to Chicago this weekend to take a look at different things and get different things in order to make sure that we are on our way toward the convention. It's going to be good. So looking forward to my trip to Chicago this weekend, looking forward to my trip to LA coming up. But join us. If there's one event you come to in this year, make it July 12th, 2025. It's going to be an event you don't want to miss. We're doing the 7-day workshop for CPI members surrounding it. That's also very important and very exciting. There's all kinds of stuff happening, but we will love to see you in Chicago. So please join us. It's going to be good. It's going to be a good event. So now Tim sent me a reminder to talk about something I was going to talk about anyway, which is we now have a Telegram channel for CPI. Yes, we do. We have a CPI Telegram channel. So if you're on the Telegram app, I would encourage you to go and immediately subscribe to it. Join our Telegram channel. It's new. We just launched it today. Tim Timoshenko took it on, made it his project. He's doing a tremendous job with it. I know Gavin is also involved, and he's also very, very tremendous. And so, yeah, we have this very, very, very cool Telegram channel that we are building for the Center for Political Innovation. So go subscribe or join. I think it's join our Telegram channel. You join the Telegram channel. Go and join it today. Just a way to stay in touch with everything that we are doing. So yeah, that's also happening. Good times. So those are some big announcements that we've got going on. I have another thing that's going on that I'll probably talk about later in the broadcast. But quick reminder, the way we do things on this channel, you can send questions via Rumble Rant, or you can Cash App me, Caleb Moppin 22 on Cash App, or you can send a Rumble Rant. And the way that these streams go is I give opening remarks. Then from there we do the roll call. Then from there I answer your questions. And that's the way we do things. That's the way this channel happens. So send me some good questions. There's a good crowd on the Rumble already. There's a good crowd on YouTube. People are watching. If you're on Facebook, I can't see your questions on Facebook, so you got to get on the Rumble, or you got to get on YouTube. Or you can Cash App me, I guess, if you're watching on Facebook. That works too. But yeah, that's the way we'll be taking questions. So I'm going to just jump into a couple things tonight. Just a couple things. As I said, I was in Washington, D.C. yesterday. Went to the World War II Memorial. Walked around the National Mall a little bit. The Washington Monument. Just that whole area in downtown D.C. I couldn't get a hotel room in D.C. Like I normally would do because it was a weekend. It was a weekend when it was warm weather, and there's a lot of tourists in town for the cherry blossoms. So I ended up having to get a hotel room in Virginia, and then I rode in to take care of business in Washington, D.C. And I will say, it's a good thing I wore sunscreen because, as you can see, my face is already a little bit red from the allergies and all of that. I didn't wear sunscreen on my hands. I woke up this morning with bright red hands from the sun. I am a redhead, and we burn like crazy. We redheaded people, we burn like crazy. There are certain things that red-haired people do that if you are red-haired, you know about. If you're not red-haired, you don't. For example, we sunburn very, very easily. Certain places like the back of our necks, our faces, our hands, you get sunburned. Another thing that red-haired people often do is sunlight makes us sneeze, right? If you're in a dark area and you're a red-haired person with very, very fair skin, and you go out into the sunlight, ka-choo, ka-choo, right? The sunlight makes you sneeze. Now, I tell people about this, and they say that's crazy. The sunlight makes you sneeze. I don't believe that. Well, look it up. It's something that people with very, very fair skin, people that are Irish, and not only red-haired people, but people from Eastern Europe, some folks, Norwegian folks, it's certain aspects of being a red-haired person. From what I understand, red-haired people, we have a higher pain tolerance than other people do, statistically, which is interesting. But at the same time, we also experience pain more than other people do, right? We feel pain more. That's why we have a higher pain tolerance, is because we feel it more than other people do, because our skin has more sensitivity. It's actually very, very interesting. But anyway, I could ramble about red hair and what red hair means for a long time. Apparently, red hair originated in the Caucasus Mountains. When I was in Iran, I remember I was at a big Islamic gathering where all these people were praying and stuff like that. And I saw these red-haired guys. And I said, who are those red-haired guys? And they said, those are Caucasians. I said, they're Caucasians? Because in America, the word Caucasian just means white person. But it took me a minute to realize that what they meant is they were literally Caucasians. They were from the Caucasus Mountains. And apparently that is where red hair originated. The genetic mutation that caused people to be red-haired originated in the Caucasus Mountains. Very, very interesting. So red-haired people are Caucasians. Apparently there are quite a few Chechens that have red hair. And it's very, very common among Chechens. And that is why some of the early ISIS fighters in the Syrian conflict, when ISIS emerged, there were a number of them that had bright red beards. And the reason for that is they were Chechens. A lot of Chechens have red hair, and they were Islamic extremists from Chechnya who had been recruited, and that a fair number of these Islamic extremists from Chechnya with bright red hair, they ended up being some of the early ISIS fighters. It's really wild. Norse mythology tells that the god Thor had bright red hair. And, people in America, we generally associate it with Irish people. It's Irish people that have red hair. That's the stereotype. And I am Irish on both sides, but Irish Protestant. My family was here on both sides before the American Revolution. So my family is very rural, very farm-oriented. My father's family is from Missouri, and my mother's family has been in Ohio for many generations. And we are rural folks and Protestant, and the stereotypes about Protestant Irish people are very different. And that, there's this whole Irish American culture. It was just St. Patrick's Day a couple weeks ago. And Irish Americans are considered to be Roman Catholic. They are considered to be urban dwellers. They live in the cities, and they are police, and they are firemen, and they drink lots of alcohol, and they're rough, and they fight. That's not Irish Protestants. My family's heritage are rural folks, and they did not believe in drinking alcohol, especially on my mother's side of the family. They thought drinking alcohol was a sin. I know my grandfather, when he was a kid, he was not allowed to play with face cards, playing cards, because they had faces on them. That was considered to be a graven image. And so they played what was called Rook, which was a card game that had colors and numbers, but did not have faces on it, because playing cards with faces on it was considered to be a sin. Protestant Irish folks tended to be very, very religiously fanatical. And that's a whole other thing. But I could tell you my family's history all night long. Don't know why I'm doing that. Just sitting here. It's raining outside. I'm recovering from my trip to D.C. I've got a few different things on my mind. The news. Marine Le Pen is not going to be allowed to run for president of France. And that shows you, people are like blown away, because She's a rising up and coming politician. She's the face of the new right. She's the Donald Trump of France. She's expected to win, the next election they have, because the status quo in France is quite unpopular, and she's not allowed to run. It's lawfare. They tried to do this to Donald Trump, but they were not successful in doing it. And she's not allowed to run. When Romania, we recently saw a situation where an election result was overturned, where a candidate was banned from running because he was against the European Union, because he was sympathetic to Russia. Now we see Marine Le Pen, who's a harsh critic of the foreign policy status quo in France. France is a French nationalist and a right-wing, new right figure in France. She is also it appears banned from the race. Now she's expecting an appeal. But the facade of democracy is very much shedding from the Western countries. The Western countries are appearing to be less democratic every day. And, I see this, and it's one of those SMH shaking my head moments. That said, if you're someone like me, you realize that it's never really been that democratic to begin with. Democracy serves the rich. We have a mainstream media, and that mainstream media is private property, and it treats some people as legitimate candidates and some people as not legitimate candidates, and that presidential candidates have to raise lots of money and they have to get public support, and that there is a political establishment in the United States. And the only people who are able to be candidates are people that are part of that political establishment to some degree or other. And there are different factions within our elite. There are different divisions within the ruling class. Often those divisions, though, are not manifested in the form of the two parties. Often the two parties agree on pretty much everything. And often the differences between the two parties transcend party lines. So it's a very complex situation, but overall, there is a money elite that is tied in with the government that runs the United States, and that's the reality of the situation. And what does democracy really mean? People think democracy means having elections. That is not the case. Democracy just means the rule of the people. A republic is an elected government. So if you're talking about having elections, that would mean you have a republic, right? When the ancient Greek city-state of Athens began having an elected government, it was a republic. During the time period in Rome, before they adopted a hereditary monarch as their emperor, they were the Roman Republic, and we pledge allegiance to the republic for which it stands. We are an elected government. An elected government is a republic. Democracy just means the rule of the people. And I've many times, and the way we talk about these things, there's a nuanced and complex way of talking about these things. I wish these things were simple and we could just throw a slogan out there. We could just say democracy serves the rich and all that, but that doesn't answer the question. One of the best conversations I ever had was in a country that is also a republic. It's an Islamic republic, and that was the Islamic Republic of Iran. And in Iran, they have elections, they have political parties, they have a constitution, but they say in Iran they are not a total democracy. They are a guided democracy. Their democracy is guided by the religious leaders, the Ayatollahs, the people who led the Islamic Revolution. And they have something called the Guardian Council. And every time they have an election, the Guardian Council, which is a group of Islamic scholars, Ayatollahs, they approve or disapprove candidates based on how much they consider them to be in line with the Islamic Revolution. And if candidates are approved, they are allowed to run. And if they get the most votes, they win. If they're not approved, they're not allowed on the ballot. And this system of having a guardian council, U.S. leaders will point to that and they say, well, Iran is not democratic. Someone can be popular, but if the guardian council says they can't run, then they don't get to run. And when I was in Iran, an Islamic scholar said, that's right. Iran is not a total pure democracy. We are a guided democracy. And you in America, you have the exact same thing that we have. right? In Iran, you're not allowed to run for office unless you're approved by the Guardian Council. And in the United States, you're not allowed to be a serious candidate for office, and you're not treated as a real candidate. You don't get media attention unless you're approved by the people who have the most money. And the rich and powerful, unless they decide to treat you as a real candidate, you're not a real candidate. Now, you call your system in America, you call it total, pure democracy, but it's not. It's democracy guided by great wealth. Whereas in Iran, they have a very powerful state, the Islamic Republic, the state that comes out of the revolution. They have a very powerful paramilitary organization called the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. And the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps is the biggest economic entity in the country. And the Islamic Republic, the state, controls the natural resources, controls the banking system, basically controls the overall economy. And that representatives of that state, the religious leaders of that state, approve and disapprove the candidates and guide the democracy. So they say, now, which would you rather have it? Would you rather have your democracy be guided by whoever just happens to have the most money? Or would you rather have your democracy guided by the people who led the revolution and lead this institution that is developing the country with 5-year economic plans and et cetera? And that, yes, we are not a pure democracy in Iran. We are a democracy guided by the Islamic revolutionary movement, by the Revolutionary Guards, by the Islamic Republic, by the Ayatollahs, by the Guardian Council. And that this pointed things out, and that we're often told in the United States that a country is democratic as long as Wall Street wins, right? And that's one thing. I see this over and over again, this theme of democratic regression, right? We're told. And I started seeing these articles 2015, 2016, 2017, Wall Street Journal. They'd run articles about how Venezuela and Russia are examples of democratic backsliding or democratic regression. And the story goes that, in Russia in the 1990s, they had an election and they elected Russian President Vladimir Putin. And he won the election fair and square. He's the most popular guy. He got the most of the votes. But then when he got into office, he started, quote, tampering with independent institutions, right? And he started changing the military, changing the economy, changing the media, and because he did that, even though he had a popular mandate to do it, these, quote, independent institutions became controlled, and so it's not democracy, and then it's no longer a democracy. And they say the same thing about Venezuela. They say, oh, well, Hugo Chavez got elected. He clearly had a popular mandate, but after he got elected, he started tampering with independent institutions, and he changed the nature of the economy, and he changed the military, and he changed the way the media operate, and so it's not a democracy anymore. And what you notice is the flaw in that narrative is that in the 1990s in Russia, the economy was being looted, and it was under the control of BP and Shell and Chevron and British bankers like Bill Browder and Hermitage Capital Management. And it wasn't independent. Their economy wasn't independent. It was just serving Wall Street. And they called it economic genocide. The country was being looted. 1 in 10 people either left the country or died. Andre Gunder Frank called it economic genocide. Mass poverty, mass homelessness, 30% unemployment. I mean, it was bad, but that was independent. Whereas when Putin got elected and started fixing things, then it was no longer independent. And so it was, and the same for the media. There was media in Russia that was basically repeating the Western propaganda line, serving the Pentagon, serving Wall Street, etc. So, but it was independent. But then when Putin changed it and started subsidizing media with state funds and started setting up media that was in line with the project of building a modern Russia and building a stronger, well, it was no longer independent. And you go down the line, and the same for Venezuela, right? You know, Venezuela's police used to break strikes, and they used to disappear student activists, and, you know, they would get disappeared and all of that. Well, then Hugo Chavez came in. He changed the military, started sending the military to Cuba to get their military training. He changed the police and how they operated. He set up Bolivarian militias in neighborhoods, and he changed all of that. And so I guess it was no longer independent because it was no longer working for Wall Street. It was working for Venezuela. And they all had a popular mandate to do it. But it's this notion that if society stops serving the people that just kind of win by de facto, then that means it's a dictatorship. But if the people that have the money and the people that dominate the global economy, if the Wall Street and London monopolies just rule, that's just normal. That's just to be expected. That's just how things are supposed to be. That's an open, free society. And it's suddenly a dictatorship if you start tampering with that and doing things to keep Wall Street and London ruling the world is not considered to be dictatorship. That's just defending the open society. However, pushing back, that is considered to be dictatorship. And that just goes to show you, I have made this point before, and I will make it again. If we're not talking republic elected government, we're talking democracy, rule of the people. I would say that there are a number of countries that are very, very authoritarian, that do not have anywhere near the level of free speech that we have, that are more democratic. North Korea is more democratic than the United States. How could that possibly be, Caleb? There's no freedom of speech in North Korea. Yeah, you're right. There's no freedom of religion in North Korea. Not exactly. There's more freedom of religion than there used to be, but you know, okay, even if that were true. Well, how can North Korea, Caleb, be more democratic than the United States? I'll tell you. Because the North Korean government would not be in power for 1 minute if there was not a huge network of people in every neighborhood, in every apartment building, in every rural village, in every farm, in every factory, who were actively carrying out the will of the government, who were sitting there, waking up every day and saying, how can I help carry out the goals of the Korean Workers' Party? And if you go to an anti-imperialist country, you go to Cuba, you go to Iran, you go to Russia, you go to China, you go to Venezuela, you go to Nicaragua. In those countries, those governments are heavily reliant on a very, very well-organized network of people who go to meetings all the time and are constantly going around their neighborhood, talking to people in the neighborhood and enforcing the will of the government. The Chinese Communist Party has somebody in every apartment building who's knocking on everybody's door, who's keeping track of who in the apartment building seems like they're a good communist and who's loyal and who if you go to Iran, they have these things called Basij councils. And those Basij councils are in every neighborhood, and they're going around keeping track of who it is who's attending the pro-government rallies and who's watching government TV and who's wearing headscarves and Iran and Russia and China and North Korea and Venezuela and Nicaragua and all these countries we think of as very authoritarian. They're very authoritarian. I mean, Venezuela has a lot more freedom, and it doesn't matter. They still call it a brutal dictatorship. North Korea is very, very militarized and regimented. There's a bit of a sliding scale, but regardless, none of these governments would be able to be in power if they did not have a very, very, very heavily mobilized population that is very much involved in enforcing the will of the government, right? If there were not people who every single day were going out and engaging in government activity, collecting information, organizing in their neighborhood, overseeing community operations, they have people on up and down, forward and backwards. There's not a part of the country that if you're in China, there's not a part of the country, the Chinese Communist Party doesn't have people in it, maneuvering and even at private companies, right? I think, was it Disney, ABC Disney was complaining about how in all their offices in China, the local, Communist Party managing committee is managing the offices and deciding what decorations go up and all kinds of, and they've got in every office building at ABC Disney's office in China, they've got Communist Party people who are walking around the office, making sure that the office is in line with the Communist Party's goals. There is a very heavily mobilized population that is very heavily involved in governing. And we don't have that in Western countries. I mean, I can't even tell you off the top of my head who my member of city council is. And they don't give a shit about me. They've never knocked on my door. There's nobody in my apartment building who's trying to carry out the will of the Democratic Party, who keeps track of everyone in the building and is trying to organize the building to carry out the Democratic Party's goals. The Democratic Party doesn't give two shits what I do in my apartment. They want me as not involved as possible, right? That anti-imperialist states are very, very reliant on a very heavily involved population. So even though they may not have the same level of free speech that we have, and even though they may not have the same level of even electoral transparency or whatever you want to call it, even though that's the case, they're more democratic because democracy means rule of the people. And if you go to an anti-imperialist state, you will see for yourself how heavily involved in ruling the people are. Whereas here in the United States, the people are not involved in ruling at all. And actually, and this is where it gets somewhat interesting, people being heavily involved in ruling is pretty authoritarian. If you really think about it, if the people are ruling, they're up in your business, right? If the people are not ruling, if somebody else, some elite is in charge of ruling, that elite can step back and, hey, as long as you don't bother us, you don't do the wrong thing, we don't bother you. But if the people are heavily involved in ruling, right, that's when they get up in your business and they want to know what music you listen to. And they want to know, if you're saying the Islamic prayers like you're supposed to. And they want, and actually the people ruling can be very authoritarian. Whereas the people not being involved in governing, if you just have a group of guys who are the police, hey, they're the police, whatever, there you go. And that, this is the weird thing. We think that democracy and freedom are intrinsically linked. That's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true, right? You can have a society that's not democratic at all, where, the government pretty much lets you do what you want as long as you don't cross a certain line. Whereas you can have a society that's very, very democratic, where they're breathing down your necks and they're all over you and they're telling you, you have to do this and you have to read your Bible at 8:00 every Saturday, or else you get a fine. You think about it, right? This notion that the Western system, right? We are taught that the Western system is democracy. It is the rule of the people. It is freedom. It is, the respect for human rights that is just natural. It's just built in. It is the expression of all these good things. But as we all know, nothing is eternal. Everything comes from something else. All things contain the seeds of their own destruction. And one thing that is the greatest fallacy of Western liberal ideology is this notion that everyone should have the exact same rights at all times in all circumstances. And that human rights, they call them God-given rights, your natural rights. Everyone should have the right to free speech because that's just the way it is. And if you're against that, you're a bad person. Everyone should have the right to freedom of religion. If you don't have that, you're just a bad person. Well, I've got news for you. Nobody talked about any notion of freedom of speech or freedom of religion or freedom of the press or any of these freedoms until like the 1400s in Europe. I guess people were just evil until then. People were just evil. And then one day people woke up and said, wow, if we want to be good and right, just people, we got to give everyone freedom of assembly. Obviously, that's not what happened. The reason that there was no notion of freedom of the press or freedom of speech and all of that until a certain level of development in a certain part of the world was because there's an economic foundation to these rights. Rights come with development. The more economic development there is, the more individual autonomy that can exist and the more freedom you can have. However, at lower levels of development, that's not the case. Try in the context of what they had in medieval Europe with subsistence farming, with what you barely have. Try doing that in a democratic way. Try running a medieval commune in Europe from the year 1000 in a democratic way where everyone can say whatever they want, do whatever they want. It's not going to work, right? The reason that in the Middle Ages, everyone was taught that they were born into their place and there was no social mobility, that everyone was required to believe what the Catholic Church said or they got burned at the stake. It was heresy to disagree with the Catholic Church and you got killed. Was that just because people were evil? People were just bad people back then? No. It's because the level of economic development that existed at that time facilitated that level of freedom. And once that level of economic development had been transcended, society adjusted. And the rights of man, life, liberty, and property, the French Revolution, the English Civil War, the American Revolution, all that emerged once a certain level of development had been created. And this is something that Western propaganda obscures. That if you had gone to people living in the year 4000 BC, if you'd gone to people in ancient Egypt and said, you all should be able to have total freedom of speech and total freedom of assembly, and you should be able to believe whatever religion you want, they would have looked at you like you were a lunatic. And they would have said to you, no, we shouldn't. Are you crazy? They would have thought you were insane. And it wasn't because they were all bad people and they just didn't have the morality that came into existence with the birth of John Locke. That's not the case. And Western propaganda will often formulate the concept of rights and liberties, which are good things. I want as much freedom as possible. I want as much rights as possible. I'm not a big fan of social coercion. I am not a big fan of social hierarchies and the degradation that people have to go through. These are all awful things, but they exist out of necessity. And as society develops, the necessity for these things begins to vanish. I would like to see a society in which there is so much wealth and so much abundance that the very need for any government fades away. I would like to see a society with no coercion, where no one is coerced, where you can just do what you feel like doing, from each according to his own ability to each according to his needs. I would like to see a society with not only freedom of speech and freedom of assembly and freedom of religion, but total freedom, period, where people can just do what they want to do. And everyone's pretty much equal because there's so much to go around and no one hoards anything, etc. That society, that is what Marxists called the higher stage of communism. A world based with so much abundance that total freedom exists. However, that is based on a level of development. And this is what is completely missing from the Western liberal democratic understanding. I studied political science in college, and this, what I'm telling you now, is not taught. They don't understand this. We're taught about the ideals of the Enlightenment in Europe as if they are permanent. And we're taught comparative politics in terms of good countries versus bad countries. And it's a very limited understanding. And that, the idea that all people should have all the exact same rights under all circumstances, our Constitution doesn't even say that. Our Constitution makes clear that if Congress declares war, all of our freedoms go away, right? If Congress declares war, which they haven't done since the Second World War, if a state of war is declared by the U.S. Congress, at that point, there is no freedom of speech. There's no freedom of assembly. You'll notice that when the Second World War happened, the USA became pretty much a military dictatorship. And the Japanese Americans were all rounded up and put in camps. And, a lot of pretty intense things happened during that war. And that wasn't the USA not being a democracy anymore. But our Constitution says that if we are in a state of war, if we're in a declared war, all of that vanishes. And most constitutions say that if a state of emergency is declared, etc., everything can be basically put on hold. And so you have to keep that in mind. And that, again, all of this is a bit of a facade. And so now we're seeing in Europe, they're not letting Marine Le Pen run. They didn't let the guy in Romania who was sympathetic to Russia, was critical of the European Union. They didn't let him run. And we're starting to see a pattern here of the facade of democracy within the Western imperialist homeland starting to slip away. It's interesting. There's a quote from the anarchist Emma Goldman. Emma Goldman was kind of a famous middle-class anarchist who lived in New York City. She'd been born in Russia. She moved to New York City, and she had a magazine called Mother Earth, and she was kind of a middle-class feminist anarchist. She was associated with labor unions to some degree or other, but her feminism was much more aimed at middle class and social freedom. She got arrested for birth control, things like that. Emma Goldman, there's a quote of hers where she said, "If voting could change anything, it would already be illegal." Now, that's what she said. And you think about that quotation. I've often said that's a little bit ultra left. That's a little bit extreme because I believe in participating in elections. And I believe that, that we shouldn't just call for revolution. We should participate in elections. There are times where, one candidate is better than the other, et cetera. Right. And but in a weird way, the surface level of that quote, if voting could change anything, it would already be illegal. The surface level of that is elections never matter. But you can take it another way, which is when elections start to matter, they cancel them. And that's kind of what we're seeing, right? In Romania, they had an election that could change something. So they made it illegal, right? And it looks like in France, they were getting ready to have an election that could actually change something. So they made it illegal. I mean, that's not what Emma Goldman meant with her quote, but it seems that when situations happen where you do have elections that could actually change things, that's when they start trying to make them illegal. And that's another way of interpreting Emma Goldman's famous quotation. Very interesting. Very interesting. But another news item, I don't know if you saw, but there was a New York Times piece that basically confirmed everything that all of us in the Russian media and around Russian media have been saying from the beginning, which is that the war in Ukraine is not a war between Ukraine and Russia. It is a war with the United States using Ukraine to fight Russia. And the New York Times confirmed that. The U.S. government was telling Ukraine where to attack, was directing the military. And it's all in the New York Times. It's all right there. It's all right there in print, right? That's the way that the Ukraine war has been fought. It has been the United States directing the Ukrainian military, telling them where to attack, giving them the weapons to do it. The whole thing is just a proxy war between the United States and Russia, with Ukraine being used as the cannon fodder on the U.S. side. And I've said that the whole time. And when we said it, it was a conspiracy theory. That's a conspiracy theory. Why are you spreading Russian propaganda? Well, now the New York Times said it. Are they spreading conspiracy theories? Are they promoting Russian propaganda? And there's just so many examples of this we can point to since the beginning of the Ukraine war, right? We told you all that Ukraine was harvesting organs from dead soldiers. They said, that's propaganda. And now Ukraine has admitted they're doing this, passed a law against it. They're very embarrassed. I mean, there are just so many things that we have said the entire time. We said they're biological weapons. Oh, now that's confirmed. Victoria Nuland said it on the floor of Congress. So many examples of things that were said in Russian media that were true, that were called conspiracy theories, etc. And now mainstream media says it as if Russia hasn't been saying it the whole time, and as if it's not even scandalous. They just admit it. Oh yeah, well, it's a proxy war against Russia. So what's the point? What's the point? And that right there just tells you how frustrating all of this can be. I have a couple thoughts to share with you all. I will remind you all, to join the Telegram channel. If you haven't joined the Telegram channel, go ahead and join the Telegram channel. We've got a new CPI Telegram channel. Thank you, Tim and Gavin, for taking that on. I will also remind you, that we are taking questions, and the questions can be in the form of Rumble rants on the Rumble, or they can be sent to me via Cash App, Caleb Moppin 22. So send me some questions to answer in the second half of the show. That would be good. Send me some questions. Always good to have something to talk about in the second half of our program. Send me some questions. But I'm just telling you all that, how do I put this? Hamster wheels are bad. Let me emphasize this once again. Hamster wheels are bad. I say that with all due respect to our furry friends. There are many, children, teenagers, elderly folks who really enjoy having pet hamsters and find it very adorable when their pet hamsters get on their wheels and go around and round and round. And, hamster wheels are fine for hamsters. And so, if you're a hamster, hamster wheels are great. But if you are not a hamster, if you're a person, not a hamster, I am a person. I am not a hamster. I am a person. God damn it. If you are like me and you are not a hamster, but a person, hamster wheels are very, very bad. And, this is anti-hamster propaganda, I guess. But what is a hamster wheel? Right? Let's get a picture just so you know what I'm talking about when I talk about a hamster wheel. There may be somebody somewhere, right? Maybe there's some country where they don't have hamster wheels. There's someone watching there. And he's like, what is he talking about? What in the world is he talking about? Hamster wheels. I will show you a hamster wheel. I'm going to get you a good graphic to show you just exactly what I mean by a hamster wheel. All right. Right. What was the Monty Python thing? Your mother was a hamster and your father smelled of elderberries. But anyway, we're going to put a hamster wheel on the screen so we know what we are talking about. Hamster wheels are bad. The hamster is adorable. It's an adorable little hamster. But that wheel that he's on might be good for him to get some exercise in his little hamster cage, but it's bad for you. That hamster wheel is bad for you. How do I put this? There are a million distractions going on. Somebody that I just continue to just be in awe of, even though I don't agree with her about a lot of things. I might agree with her about foreign policy. I might agree with her about the danger of our rights being stripped away. But other than that, we don't agree on a lot. We have a very, very different perspective. But I am in awe of what she has accomplished for anti-imperialism. And that person is Angela McCurdle of the Libertarian Party. And she tweeted out today, we are having a crisis of leadership in the libertarian movement. I mean this specifically in regards to strategy and moving policy forward. We have a surplus of brilliant thinkers and outspoken voices, but not nearly enough people who are willing to lead libertarians in policy and electoral politics. There are multiple reasons for this. The obvious one being that working with libertarians can be toxic, miserable experience. There's lots of very fine people, though, and they need skilled, dedicated leaders to step up and help them advance their beautiful philosophy. I think I will start training people. And I replied to Angela's tweet, and I said, this applies to all dissident spaces. The deep state isn't threatened by all of us being smart on the internet. It's threatened by real organizations carrying out real operations. She replied, correct. Right now, I am convinced that they have gone out of their way to set up a bunch of hamster wheels to prevent real operations for anti-imperialism from being carried out. And I see this, right? Look, the government does not care that I'm on here right now talking to you. They could care less. There's 163 of you watching. I care about you. You care about me, but the government doesn't really mind. They really don't care if we're all just being smart on the internet. They don't care if we're, understanding that they're lying to us and we just sit on the internet feeling isolated and lonely about it. They care when we get together and build real organizations and start to mobilize and get shit done. That's what scares them. And that basically we're in a situation where the way dissent is being controlled is with hamster wheels. They've got 1 million hamster wheels that you can get on where you just get all your energy out, but all you're doing is spinning on a hamster wheel. And I see this a lot of what goes on in dissident spaces. And I'm not just talking about communists or leftists. I'm also talking about libertarians, and I'm talking about the far right. A lot of what goes on in dissident spaces amounts to hamster wheels. It is people on podcasts fighting with other people on podcasts. It is trying to expose and get the dirt on so-and-so. It is intricate rivalries that nobody outside of our internet bubble can understand, right? Great example, right? I'll show you a clip of film, right? I will show you a clip of film of somebody in a hamster wheel. This is what a real life hamster wheel looks like. I actually just thought of this on the spur of the moment. But anyway, this is a real life hamster wheel, right? So I was in Portland, Oregon with Peter and Carl the Trinket Man and Noah. And we were in Portland, Oregon, and we figured it was the day before our last national convention that we did last fall. And we figured we needed to hit the streets and talk about Palestine. So we decided to actually do something, to actually get out there and talk about Palestine in the streets of Portland, Oregon. Right? And so we're out there. We got a bullhorn, we got a banner, and we started marching through the streets of Portland, Oregon, supporting the Palestinians. I'll show you what our banner said. We were in the streets. Peter Coffin filmed it and others, and we just wanted to show in a populist way that there was support for the Palestinian people on the streets of Portland. So we had our banner, jobs and schools for America, not weapons for Israel, right? Jobs and schools for America, not weapons for Israel. We had an American flag and a Palestinian flag. We had a bullhorn. We were out there agitating, showing people who would never go looking for this, people that aren't part of our internet bubble, people that are just kind of random people, right? Like this random girl, we just gave her a palm card, right? Told her about our organization, told her our message, right? And there we go, right? And this is actually influencing the conversation, right? Here we go, right? This is changing the world. This is creating visible opposition to the regime. This is confronting people with a message. This is a demonstration. The word demonstration, it comes from Napoleon, right? The Napoleonic Wars. Back when the Napoleonic Wars were going on, the militaries would demonstrate. They would march around in formation and demonstrate the weaponry that they had to the other side. So we were out there in the streets of Portland demonstrating anti-imperialism and talking about how we need money and jobs and schools for America, not weapons for Israel. Here in America, not weapons for the Israeli murderers. That's what we're here to say. Absolutely. We're having a convention this weekend. could have a whole great future beyond imperialism. Beyond the rule of the big corporations and banks and monopolies, we could rebuild this country and make it into something.
Right.
America, not weapons for Israel. Free Palestine, solidarity with the people of the world in their struggle against imperialism. That's what we're out here to say. Join us. It's going to be a great event in Oregon City this weekend. Dare to struggle, dare to win. A world beyond imperialism. Money for jobs and schools in America, not for Israeli crimes against the Palestinian people. Join us. Center for Political Innovation. It's going to be good.
All right, so we go across the street, and I hand that, and this guy rips it up and starts talking about tankies. Right? And he starts talking about tankies.
Hi.
We need a whole new America for working families, jobs, healthcare, and education, not crimes and bombing and destruction. That's what we are out here to say.
All kinds of people were giving us.
Stop the attacks on the Palestinian people. End the destruction of Gaza. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Good times, huh?
You see that guy all mad about tankies?
Internet shit.
Tankies.
Tankies.
Did he say Mildred?
That's what he said, yeah.
Oh my God, that's thought slime.
What he's talking about. Where this is real life. It's not his favorite internet show.
He was whispering. No one else was caring. They were all just
Yeah, they're all just like, yeah, okay. I'm not.
He very much wanted to be the main character. He wanted that to be his moment that he got
I said
added
hi
to
to
the
him.
MCU.
I go, hi.
We're all out here talking about Gaza and
Yeah.
talking about internet stuff. So it's going to be a great event.
Again, he wanted his entry into the Vouch CU or whatever. The
All right.
Cinematic Universe.
The destruction of Gaza, the murder of children being carried out by Israel right now is something we oppose. It is bad for the Palestinians. It is bad for the people of the world. It's also bad for America. We envision a whole new society beyond the rule of corporations and banks. An America for working families, people before profits. That's what we are out here to talk about here in Portland, Oregon. Free Palestine. Free Palestine. Hands off the Palestinian.
And, you know, people on the streets of Portland, Oregon, they know what Palestine is. They know what Israel is. But nobody knows who Mildred is, and nobody knows what a tanky is, and nobody cares. And, you know, but it's part of an internet bubble that somebody's part of. And yes, and this guy is on a hamster wheel. Is he out there organizing about Israel and Palestine? Of course not. He's in an internet bubble, right? And in his mind, he's not thinking about how can I get the people, my fellow Portlanders, to oppose Israel. He's thinking about Mildred, tankies, blah, 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 blah. And it's a hamster wheel, right? And this is probably a person that deep down probably does support the Palestinians, probably does oppose Israel, but he's gotten into a hamster wheel. That's my point, is that at the end of the day, this is what they're doing, is they're getting people in our circles, in dissident communities, they're getting them into a hamster wheel. Instead of doing what we were doing and being out there and trying to oppose Israel's crimes and raise anti-imperialist consciousness, that guy is sitting looking at his cell phone fighting about tankies and Mildred and this internet personality doesn't like this other internet personality, and it's a fucking hamster wheel. It's a hamster wheel, right? And nobody in reality cares about any of that shit. But this is how they're messing with dissidents. Is they are getting us caught up in stupid hamster wheels, fights between personalities that no one in the real world has ever heard of, obscure, minute differences, and this is the danger of fandom, right? Is it gets you wrapped up in some kind of alternate internet reality, and it prevents you from actually getting to the masses of people and building a real movement. And we don't want to get into a hamster wheel, right? We are working very, very, very hard. No, I have been demonetized by YouTube. So if you would like to send a super chat, you'll need to send over Cash App, or you'll need to send a Rumble rant. YouTube has demonetized us. We can't get super chats anymore because YouTube is messing with our freedom of speech. It's really obnoxious. Hoping we can get that reversed at some point, but that's the way we are. And I'm trying to urge people. To not get wrapped up in hamster wheels. The hamster wheels are a complete mess, and they prevent you from carrying out the work that needs to be done. And they keep you in this internet bubble. It's very toxic. Nothing productive ever comes out of these, obscure internet personality battles. Nothing productive ever comes out of it. And nobody ever listens to anybody else. And it's not really about politics. It's about personalities and who's good and who's bad and what team are you on? Are you on the blue team? Are you on the red team? Right. And that we have to very much focus on getting the job done. That's what we are doing. So now I wanted to mention to you all the project. I've been talking about this, and I will mention it once again. And thank you. I have gotten a fair amount of support in this effort already. Thank you to everyone who's already contributed. But part of getting out of the bubble, part of getting to the masses is this book. Who are the Houthis and what are they fighting for? And I have put an order in for this book to be printed in bulk. I'm going to be going to pick up 1,000 copies of this book very soon. And that's not cheap. I'm going to be paying roughly $1,900, when I pick this up. I would like, if other people could help me offset the costs. Now, we have set up a GoFundMe, and people have been very, very generous on the GoFundMe. Let me pull it up. People have been very, very generous, but more helps. It helps, right? If you can do more, it helps. And you don't have, if you would prefer to not give on the GoFundMe, you can just directly send to me on Cash App, Caleb Maupin 22. But here's the GoFundMe site, and we're trying to offset the cost. We have a new edition of this book that we have printed, and it has a couple corrections in it, and it has the conference, the convention on the back. That's the main thing, is it has our big Chicago convention and the details, location, everything on the back, so that we can raise awareness. And we are going to have 1,000 copies of this book to distribute in Chicago, hopefully more if we can raise the funds. And we are going to visit mosques in Chicago. We are going to go to pro-Palestine events, and we are going to get this to everybody. And we're, right now the U.S. government is bombing Yemen. It's bombing the Houthis. And so people ought to know, who are the Houthis? What are they fighting for? Right. And so we're trying to raise money for this printing to offset the printing cost. It's going to cost us about $1,900. We've gotten a fair amount of donations, but if you can offset any of that, someone sent me $300, greatly appreciated. Someone sent me $5, also greatly appreciated. Anything you can do would be very, very helpful. You can donate on Cash App, Caleb Maupin 22, or if you would prefer, you can do the GoFundMe. Either way, you can do that. And I'm picking up the books Wednesday morning. It looks like Wednesday morning I'm headed to pick up these books, and I'm taking them to Chicago, or at least a large number of them to begin with, to Chicago this weekend to begin the distribution process. So if you would like to get this message about who the Houthis are and what they are fighting for and all of that, if you'd like to help get this message as widely distributed as possible, please send a contribution. Donate on the GoFundMe, or donate on the Cash App. We are trying to not get into the hamster wheel. Now, that is what we are. That's the whole reason CPI was set up. We said out of the movement to the masses. And that's what we meant, is don't get caught up in the hamster wheel. We want to reach people who would never go looking for this message. We want to speak to people who've never heard anyone who can share this perspective. That's what we're trying to do. That is what we are trying to do. And no one else is trying to do that. All the people in the alternative media sphere are all fighting with other people in the alternative media sphere. They're all trying to be king of an obscure niche. They don't care if we ever build a mass movement, if we actually win and defeat imperialism. All they care about is they get to be the most famous anti-imperialist on the internet. They get to be the king of communism on the internet. They get to be all this. And we are pivoting in a whole new direction with innovationism because we don't want to get caught up in this bullshit. We are not interested in hamster wheels. We are trying to avoid hamster wheels, and it's very difficult. We have a job to do. We have a very important job to do. I tried to explain this to somebody that we have a very important job to do. I said, we're trying to get a very, very important job done. And they said, so are we. And I wanted to slap this person because all this person's organization does is have Zoom calls about Stalin. They literally have Zoom calls where they talk about leftist gossip and they talk about Stalin. And they said, well, we're trying to get an important job done too. No, you're not. You are not trying to get an important job done. You and your silly internet communism club are not doing an important job. You are on a hamster wheel, my friend. We are trying to get an important job done. And if you look at what CPI has done over the years, confronting Sa Ing-wen on the streets of New York, going to Russia for the World Youth Festival, having, meetings at the United Nations, where we raised the Uhuru case, building support for the Uhuru movement. Going to Madison Square Garden with a big banner that says only peace can make America great again. It's got Trump and Kim shaking hands, going to the inauguration and handing out thousands of anti-imperialist booklets. We are getting a job done. We have a very, very serious job to get done, which is to build an anti-imperialist movement in America. And there are so many people that agree that imperialism is bad, agree that, having World War III with Russia is bad, agree that, our rights are being stripped away, and think that what it means to be productive is to sit on the internet and talk shit about other people who think roughly the same thing. Not helpful. And on top of that, many of them have this very scarcity-oriented mindset where they're more concerned about beating other people and engaging in some kind of contest with other people that are in this obscure niche of politics. Look, when I was at the World Youth Festival, we at CPI were thinking about building an anti-imperialist movement. Certain people were there with us. And I would sit across from them at breakfast, and these fucking idiots would just sit there. Oh, did you know that we're going to be elected to the 3rd committee of the 12th? And we're just like, we don't care. What? Huh? And every morning I sat with these people from certain organizations that claim the name of communism, and they're not all in the same group anymore. And I would sit there and I would listen to them, and it was all just a giant dick waving contest, dick measuring contest. Well, I'm on the 3rd committee, and we actually got elected to the 4th position of the 4th thing, and I'm thinking nobody fucking cares. And I mean, it would be classic. We'd be sitting there with Russian teenagers who are just teenagers from Russia who are meeting an American for the first time, want to know what it's like in America. Want to know why Americans are so hateful towards Russia. And they're sitting there explaining to them, oh, well, actually, it's because of the, there's this other little tiny communist group in America and they're no good. And we'd look at them like, what the fuck is wrong with you? What the fuck is wrong with you? No, we're in Russia, dude. These people have never heard of any of these communist groups in America. And that it's embarrassing, right? It's embarrassing, but it really flows from, they have assumed we've already lost. They've assumed we're never going to have a mass following among the American people. Never are we going to have a real movement that can actually change the world. They've given up on that. The idea that we could actually influence society, no, that's never going to happen. They've lowered their sights to, well, we're always going to be a small, fringe, irrelevant movement, but I'm going to be the best one. I'm going to be the most important one of all of them. I'm going to be the king of the protest cage. It's so disappointing. It is absolutely disappointing. And the whole reason that CPI exists, the whole reason we're called the Center for Political Innovation, is I have said we need to break out of this. We need to get to the masses. We need to build an actual movement. And there are just so many people who agree with me on a lot, but that just doesn't occur to them. And if you do that, they get very threatened. They get very scared. They get very scared very quickly. And they panic. That's because you're a narcissist. That's why you want to do it. You're an egotistical narcissist. You're pandering to reaction. You want to recruit average people because you're racist. They're all racist, and you're racist, and that's why you want to wave the American flag is because you're racist, and they have this panic attack. And really what they're scared of is that it's a risk. It's safe. If you want to just sit on the internet, you're not overturning the apple cart. You're not challenging the power structure. You're not changing anything, and they're never going to come and drag you away. And you can just sit there on the internet and complain and be lonely, and nobody cares. You start building a real movement. You start getting real shit done. They panic. They start, and it's more risk, and it's a lot safer to just be a complainer. It is a lot safer to just be an internet naysayer than it is to actually build something. Great example, the Rage Against the War Machine rally. That event, February 19th, 2023, that was a tremendous event. Absolutely tremendous. But in the lead up to it, social media went apeshit. Right? Social media went apeshit in the lead up to it because they were very, very afraid. And I believe it was the government was very, very afraid that there'd be a massive anti-imperialist gathering. But on top of that, in addition to that, I think a lot of these people that are just used to being internet losers, they were also very threatened by it because it got them out of their safe little bubble of complaining. And I'm telling you, actually changing the world means you meet people you may not agree with and you get stuff done and you have big events. And I'll be honest with you, I met people at Rage Against the War Machine who are not close to me ideologically, but who have helped me get stuff done. And I have met many people who claim to agree with me on 95% of the issues, but they are useless. All right. I mean, I'll just be real with you. There are plenty of people out there who agree with me about a heck of a lot, but whenever it's time to do anything, they're really good at sitting on the internet and agreeing with me. But when it's time to do anything, they're not so good. And then I've met people who don't agree with me on barely anything, right? They don't agree with me about this or that, but yet we agree on certain things that matter. And then they're very helpful in coming together and actually getting stuff done. So I'm telling you, right? CPI exists to get stuff done. And we don't want to get on a hamster wheel. We really don't want to get on a hamster wheel. The hamster wheel, the way the people that are on a hamster wheel make themselves feel better generally is by putting other people down. And that's part of what the hamster wheel is all about, right? It's just putting other people who agree with you down, tearing other people who agree with you down. And it's very negative. We, on the other hand, are focused on really getting shit done. So, one thing is we got thousands of copies of this book that are going out. We got thousands of door hanger flyers of the Chicago Convention that are going to be going on people's doors between now and July 12th in Chicago. We have got an operation to get door hanger flyers on people's doors all over the Chicago area. And we're starting this weekend. I'm headed out to Chicago and we're starting the process of getting these flyers on people's doors. And it's happening. We're doing it. We need to get out of our bubble and we need to get to the masses and we need to build an anti-imperialist movement. And other people can sit there. They can be king of the protest cage. They can be so proud of themselves of, we're the leaders of this. I have always said, right, in this day and age, let me just put this out there. You don't have to wait for anybody. I know a lot of people, they get caught up in this institutional internal struggle, right? We're gonna take over the labor unions. You know, there's a radio network in New York City. I've been on it before. They've had me on it many times to give interviews. It's called WBAI, great radio network. It's kind of a leftist radio network. It comes from Pacifica Radio, and the way it's set up is that it's the program director, et cetera, is elected. And there are so many old communists and leftists that I know that are constantly there. They've got this 3D chess game they're playing. If we could just take over WBAI, if we could get this person on the board, and then they could get this person on the board, and one way or another, and nothing happens. You know, in the Communist Party, right? We're going to take over the Communist Party. Oh, we're going to get all these people on the board. No. And all these people that say there's always something to do other than just doing it. Let me repeat that. There's always something to do other than just doing it, than just building an anti-imperialist movement. Well, what did we do? The USA was bombing Yemen last fall. So I did a bunch of research. I've been on a ship to Yemen. I've been to the Middle East. I did a bunch of research, and I wrote a book telling in plain language who the Houthis are. And we printed this book and we distributed it. And I'm raising money, and I'm not waiting for somebody to give me permission. I'm not trying to get the votes to get on the board of the nope. And I'm not concerned about being on the committee of the nope. I wrote the book. I had a friend proofread the book. I edited the book. I published the book, and now we're raising money, and now we're distributing the book. We're getting it done. Right? We feel that there's a need for there to be a massive anti-imperialist rally this fall and this summer to show that people in America, to point a new way forward. So what did we do? Did we wait to get on the committee of the 12th thing? No. What did we do? We rented the Midwest Conference Center. We rented it, and we made a poster, and we got door hanger flyers, and we're doing it. We're doing it. We're actually doing it. We're just doing it. We're not waiting for anyone's permission. We're not getting caught up in this long game of 3D chess. If only we could run WBAI. If only we could run the labor unions. If only we could take over the Communist Party. If only we could do this. If only we could do that. No, we're just doing it. We're just goddamn doing it. And that's what cowards can't stand. If you just do it, you get a lot more done at the end of the day than if you wait for somebody's permission, if you get caught up in ass kissing and maneuvering. If you want a castle, you got to build it yourself. You got to build it yourself. And, you know, all these people that believe roughly the same thing that I believe, they are all jealous of me and they all hate me. And it's so goddamn sad. I'm not stopping you from doing anything, right? The fact that you don't have the confidence to write a book about the Houthis, the fact that you don't have the energy to go put on a conference, that's not my fault. And if you weren't my enemy, we'd be happy to give you a platform, you know, just to speak at our event. Like, we're just doing it. We understand how urgent it is that this needs to get done. And so we're just doing it. Penny is just doing it in Minneapolis. And people are just doing it out in LA. And we're just doing it. We're just doing it. I'm not waiting for somebody to give me permission. I'm not waiting for the board of the committee. We're just doing it. And that's what all these jealous people can't stand. It's like, how dare you? How dare you? Well, that's the point. We dare. You dare to struggle, and you dare to win. If you dare to struggle, you dare to win. Just do it. Just do it. And so we're doing it. CBI, that's the whole reason we exist, is to just do it. We're the Center for Political Innovation. And all these people are so jealous and so resentful and so angry and accusing us of this and accusing us of that and blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, you know, why don't you come do it with us? Why don't you come do it with us? Right? We have opened, we have given a platform to so many people and different organizations we've given a platform to. We're not competitive. We don't think it's about us being the great leader. We're just trying to get shit done. And I'm telling you, the scarcity mindset, this loser scarcity mindset, assuming we'll never expand, so you just want to position yourself as the king of this fringe irrelevant space, that is going to be the death of us. That is absolutely going to be the death of us. And I I have said so many times, I am done. I am absolutely done cooperating with that bullshit. I really am, right? I mean, if people are going to play that kind of game, I'm not playing with you. I'm not going to be part of your little king of the protest cage scheme. I'm just going to do it. I'm going to build it. And that makes them mad, right? No. I'm trying to think of an analogy, right? It would be like if there's one store in a town that sells boots, right? And there's no law that says somebody else can't open a store. And so there's one store in the town that sells boots, and you're really interested in boots. The guy who owns the store is really interested in boots. And so you go and start your own boot store in the town. You sell boots also. And he comes over, you can't do that. You have to work at my store and suck up to me, and then maybe I'll let you be part of my boot store. Why? Who said? Why can't I just open my own boot store? You got a problem with that? No, well, I am in charge. No, I'm the only one who's ever allowed. This is ridiculous. All right, and this is what we're dealing with. And even in that case, right? I mean, it is like a monopoly. It's you know, it is a monopoly situation where even that is not a very good analogy because, you know, a town can only sell so many boots. But in this situation, the goal is to actually win over the overwhelming majority of the American people. Right? Eventually, we're supposed to become the government. So, I mean, this gatekeeper, king of the protest cage, king of the tiny, I own the brand. This mentality is ridiculous, and it is stupid, and it is a barrier to actually getting shit done. And we in CPI, we have never had that attitude. We will promote other people. We will boost other people. And these people, they are all so scared that they won't be the one. They won't be the main character in the movie. That they operate in this backstabbing, childish, competitive way. You know, and I mean, it's really sad. And they read all of our stuff, and they're constantly looking for something that they can take as their own, right? But not help us in any way, right? And it is really, really sad. Only difference is we're not in it for the money, and we're marketing a different product. Exactly. We're actually trying to change the world, and we're not trying to be famous on the internet, and we're actually trying to get to the masses. We're not trying to be king of an irrelevant movement. Look, folks, there is a layer of people. I cannot wrap my mind around this enough. Folks, most communists in America don't support Russia and Ukraine. Most communists in America don't support China. Most communists in America don't stand with the people of the world against imperialism. Most communists or leftists in America are pro-imperialist liberals. There is a very, 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 very small minority of communists that are at all anti-imperialist. And among those people, there are a bunch of them, you can't make this up, who are super mad that I'm not calling myself a communist anymore. They're just up in arms. How can Caleb not be calling himself a communist anymore? You do realize the overwhelming majority of people who call themselves communists are not anti-imperialists. But you would rather that I call myself the right thing, but take the bad positions, right? That's what you're concerned about. And yes, that is what they are concerned about, because for these people, being a communist is this way they can be special and different on the internet. And they don't even realize that the overwhelming majority of people who have that name, who have that identity, don't agree with where we're at. And it's like, they're not concerned about that. All they're concerned about, is this, I want to be this identity. Why does that matter? Why does that matter? And most of the people with that identity have very, very bad politics. I mean, are playing a very, very negative role. And, most of the people in this country that are developing anti-imperialist positions hate communists. And communism itself, has a complicated history and is associated with a lot of destructive ideas and stuff. We're innovationists. And, everybody gets it. Tim gets it. Other people get it. I mean, Peter was telling me, anyone I tell that I'm an innovationist, they always get excited. Wow, innovationism. That sounds exciting. You tell people you're a communist, it's like, okay. You know, you tell them you're an innovationist, they're like, wow, that's very exciting. But yet there are people that are just so upset that we're not calling ourselves communists anymore. I don't understand this at all. I really don't understand this at all. So you're worried about what I call myself, not what I actually believe and not what I do. That's what worries you. And you're worried that I, you know, by not using a certain label, it's very interesting. You know, there are, well, anyway, I could go on a lot of tangents about all of this, but I'm telling you all of this because we are doing something very, very exciting with the Center for Political Innovation. It's very, very exciting what we're doing. And it is my focus. It is what I am dedicated to. It is the project that I have given myself to. So, you know, I think about it all night long, all day long, and working on a new book. Cover of this new book is going to be amazing, by the way. I'm very excited about this new book's cover. I'm studying about different things and headed to Chicago on Thursday. I'm getting on a plane to Chicago. I'll be there until Monday. I'm heading home on Monday. Love Chicago. It'll be good to see everybody. It'll be good to start the outreach. And, you know, a lot of good things are happening. A lot of good things are in the works. So I want to thank you all. Really, I want to thank you all for being here, for being the supportive community. I want to thank everyone who sent a contribution to help with the printing of the Houthi books. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. You know, and it's not too late. You can Cash App Caleb Maupin 22, or you can give on the GoFundMe, but you know, more funds are still needed. It's still, you know, we haven't raised the total amount yet. I mean, I'm still eating most of the cost myself, but you know, more helps. You know, I really appreciate all of you. I really, really do. You know, we have a project that we are carrying out, and we're doing it. And the love and the community that comes from this project is very, very inspiring to me. I mean, we're learning as we go. You learn from correct, practical experience. That is how you learn. You learn by doing. A huge part of learning, you can't learn from a book. You have to learn by doing. And if you just read about this stuff in books, it doesn't make sense. And I have learned a lot in the last year. I have learned a huge amount, and I have questioned a lot of my old assumptions. And I feel like I am constantly growing as a person. And that's what I want to be. You don't want to stop growing. You want to learn. To be a human being doesn't just mean that you do things to change the world. It also means you learn. And I'm really, really, really grateful to all of you that are walking this road with me. And I'm really, really excited about what we are going to accomplish together. Very excited about it. So why don't we do the roll call? And then I'll start answering questions. I might open it up. We might take some calls here. Why the heck not, right? We might do an open phones show. So names and locations. Who is with us here tonight? Names and locations. Who's with us? Names and locations. I will call you out. So we got Penny in Minnesota. Great work going on. Phil, Miami, Florida. Ed in Louisville. Lawrence Johnson in Chicago. Names and locations. Jacob in Wisconsin. Alyssa in Virginia. Chris and April in Salt Lake City. Yeah. I hope you're coming to the convention. It's going to be awesome. Rice from Adelaide, Australia. Deha in Seattle. Courtney in Virginia. Gavin in the Midwest. Timoshenko in St. Louis. He started up the Telegram. Go and sign up. Ryan in Kansas City. Jenny in Cincinnati. Joe in Durham, North Carolina. Randy from Trinidad. Rory from St. Louis. Welcome, Rory. Alex and Susan from Montreal. The South USA, Huey Long. Brad in Cleveland. The Seasoned Noob from China. Alex in Brazil. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. I will call you all out as I see you. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Who's with us? Names and locations. Who is with us? Neil Fraser in Hong Kong. Welcome, Neil. Welcome, 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 welcome. Name Emmanuel from the Philippines. Welcome, Emmanuel. I am not an innovationist. Oh, you. I think you are, Kiki. I think you are. Kinky, I think deep down you are an innovationist. I know you. I think you're an innovationist. That's what I think. The good old United States of America, the ugly truth. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Names and locations, folks. Names and locations. Who is with us tonight? Names and locations. Who is with us? Who is with us? Names and locations. Names and locations. Who's with us? Who's with us? Names and locations. Who's with us? Dan in the LA area. I'm going to be in LA coming up. Hope you join us. Going to be fun. New Brunswick. That's in New Jersey. Oh, but no, it's New Brunswick, Canada. That's in Canada. So there you go. There we go. There we go. Anybody else? Names and locations. Names and locations. I see we've got a few Rumble rants that have come in. Very, very good. Very, very good. All right. Names and locations. Anybody else? Names and locations. All righty. All righty. I am gonna do an open phones thing. You can join the show. All right. Now, got to be careful. I have to be able to see your face. That's the first thing. I have to be able to see your face. And, you know, I can remove you at any time. So behave yourself. But here's the link to join the show. Here's the link to join the show. Hop on. It's been a while since we've had people hop on. So anyone who wants to come on, you can join the show. Join the show. Right? The show must go on. Join the show. You know, if you would like to give me your opinion or something like that, you can come on the show. There's the link. Join the show. Join the show. Look, Barack Obama. Join the show. Look, join the show. We tortured some folks, and I'm just kidding. Anyway, join the show. And should be fun. We do have a couple questions that have come in. Here's Dan. Wow, that was quick. Welcome, Dan. How you doing?
Hello. Good.
Great. What's new?
I got a delay going on here or something. Let's see where.
Oh, okay.
Here.
Yeah, well, maybe talking to close your regular screen and just talk to screen.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, good. Oh, wow. The camera's weird here. Oh, can you hear? I can't hear you.
Oh, well.
Oh, wait a minute. Now I do.
Yeah. I wasn't talking. That's why.
Oh, I got a delay. It's a delay for some reason.
Oh, okay.
All
right.
No, yeah. Hey, everybody. Well, I'm excited about the workshop. We've been doing a lot of outreach, talking to people, even in situations I didn't know what to expect. I mean, we were kind of reluctant to go to a pro-Palestinian march, but that turned out to be very productive. Even some long conversations with people, and some people actually that turned out to even be local to the San Gabriel Valley, interestingly. Yeah, we're excited about. We're not expecting a humongous group. It's not big enough place to hold. A lot of
small and intimate.
anyway.
Yeah, with people who want to learn more about the group, kind of a meet and greet.
Exactly. And I think I'm discovering the same kind of thing that I did during the pandemic, is that I knew that there's a lot of people out there that they're not talking, they're silent, but they know something's not right. They don't have derangement syndrome, but they also don't have blind support for hero worship either. I'm leaving out one word there in both scenarios. And just like, during the COVID pandemic, a lot of people were questioning narratives, but were afraid to speak up, and I think that's true now. But, as we know, time passes. And if you take the initiative, as we did with the COVID pandemic, and you actually go out and you start talking to people, they open up.
Yeah.
And, you know, the old expression, it only takes a spark, you know, to get a fire going. I think that's what we're on the cusp of seeing. As yourself, I'm very excited. You know, I think the more we do this, the more we'll see evidence of that. And we have to be patient and not, you know, allow, you know, things to just kind of happen randomly and be in the moment and just let it flow. And I think we'll see some amazing things happen, but we've got to get out of our own way and just let it happen.
Indeed. I agree. And I'm looking forward. You know, April 19th, we're going to be in Los Angeles. It's going to be great. You know, go ahead and register. The link is down below. We got a good number of folks registered so far. And I know you all are doing great work. You did some outreach on Saturday and other places. And yeah, so yeah. Anything else you want to update us on, Dan?
Well, let's see. What can I update? Well, that's our main focus right now, is because we're getting kind of into a flow. Like, you know, we'll have a meeting and then we'll just go out and do some outreach. And I think that even after the workshop, we'll just continue doing that same thing, and you know, bring more people out, you know, or connect with more people, and just, you know, make the general public here more aware.
Yeah.
You know, and if anybody wants to reach out to us, feel free to do that. I am getting ready to release a new episode of my cable access television show, where I'll show you more details of what's been happening here with the Eaton fires. You know, people that are working on the recovery and the relief, and that's a really beautiful story as well. And we're showing the good and the bad, so it's not going to be all pleasant to see, if you know what I mean. But we're focusing on the good, right? And I'll share that with this community as well. If you go to the Center for Political Innovation YouTube channel, you can see some of the stuff that's going on here in LA, and I'd love to see what's going on around the country and around the world, you know, as far as outreach and even just to share, you know, what's on your mind. Please feel free. I don't want the YouTube channel to be just LA centric. Okay, really like to see more impact from more stories from other places, you know, so we can share that with each other, and that would be great.
Very good. Well, thank you, Dan. All right, go sign up for the LA workshop, folks.
Yeah. Please do.
It's gonna be fun. Thank you, Dan. Very good. So now I'm gonna answer. You know, you can join the show. Anyone's welcome to join. That was great to have Dan on there. So now I'm gonna answer. You know, we're going to start answering Rumble rants while we wait for people to jump in. So Penny Arcos in Minnesota, she says, Hegseth at Iwo Jima was with U.S. vets, honors brave Japanese vets to prepare for war against China. Meanwhile, New Mexico GOP office torched. Wow, that is shocking to me that on a World War II commemoration, you would honor veterans of, I mean, I guess, you know, you do want to commemorate everyone who died, but I mean, you know, we do remember that there were two sides in World War II, and, you know, they weren't equal sides, right? Japan did some pretty horrendous things during the war. You know, yeah, that's bizarre. And then demonizing China when China was on our side in World War II, right? There's, here, I'll even show you, you know, there was a Hollywood movie called Gung Ho. You know, and that's a phrase they use. Like if someone's really enthusiastic, they say they're real gung ho. But gung ho was actually the slogan of a, you know, of the Chinese Industrial Cooperative Association, which was a communist, you know, division of, it was a communist, you know, group in China during the Second World War. And that there's actually, you know, it was a Hollywood movie called Gung Ho, and it portrayed a group of U.S. Marines studying Maoist People's War and studying Mao's guerrilla warfare methods. So I'll show you a clip from that movie. It's kind of a classic Hollywood movie, but it's very much communist influenced. It talks about the 8th Route Army. It talks about, you know, the Mao People's War methods being used by U.S. Marines to fight Japan. So I've got that clip downloading for you all. but yeah, it's downloading. It's downloading. So, but yeah, if you want to join the show, just hop on. It was great to have Dan hop on and say a few words. We're looking forward to the LA workshop. I'm headed to Chicago this weekend, and I'll be headed out to LA. And we're doing good stuff. We are building this organization. And so what next? Stephen Asif says that interaction in Oregon was like Plato's allegory of the cave. In this case, the cave dweller is an internet sycophant who walked out of his house and was introduced to a real anti-imperialist movement. Well, thank you, Stephen. And that's exactly the case, right? But that's why it's really not his fault. As much as we were disappointed by how he conducted himself, it's not his fault. It's a hamster wheel. It's mind control, right? And that's what they're doing to internet, to dissident people, is they get them wrapped up in a hamster wheel on the internet that prevents them from going and building a real movement. We have to just do it. We have to just do it. We have to build an anti-imperialist movement. There is no alternative. We have to just do it. And so many people, they choose to hide in a bubble, and it's really easy. And, I'm certainly guilty of getting sucked into it. I'm not going to deny that I haven't erred in that direction many times. Right. But we have to make a decision as a group. We are committed to spreading our message, getting our message out there, building a genuine anti-imperialist movement. That is what we have to do. And that, that's the problem with our spaces, is there's a lot of people who do question things. There's a lot of people, but then they get wrapped up in a fandom, or they get wrapped up in the hamster wheel of internet stuff. And then they don't go out there and get done what needs to get done, right? It's time to go out and build a movement, right? There's really no alternative. Now, Hempcar says, why is land back bad? Palestinians have the right of return. Why don't native people? Well, first of all, what does land back mean? I have heard about 15 different definitions of what land back means, some of which are fine, some of which I agree with completely. Does land back mean that indigenous people should have sovereignty? Yes, I agree with that. Does land back mean that indigenous people should receive reparations for what was done to them and the generational trauma of, having their languages suppressed and the lack of economic development? Yeah, I'm not opposed to reparations. I'm not opposed to tribal sovereignty. But does land back mean that we deport all the white people from North America? That's just not realistic, my friend. That's just not going to happen, right? Does land back mean, and then another version of land back is there's an NGO, like a nonprofit that is pushing the privatization of government land so that Jeff Bezos and wealthy American companies can set up luxury apartment condos and make real estate profits using the cover of indigenous rights. I'm not for that. But the thing that I've noticed, and I'm at the point where I'm just so far past all of this at this point. But it's like, land back was one of those things on the internet that they could never explain to you what it actually means. But if you didn't immediately agree with it, you were a bad person. And I was just the one saying, hey, what does it mean? And that's, we got to be careful with all of this. There are some slogans that I've seen leftists promote that are like, they don't make any sense. One of them that I've heard, open borders. Open borders. Conservatives are constantly accusing Democrats of believing in open borders. Democrats always say, no, we don't believe in open borders. And I've seen a lot of communists and leftists go out there and say, we believe in open borders. What does that mean? Think about what you're saying. What does open borders mean? I mean, even if we had a policy that anyone who wants to come to the United States would come here, you'd still have to show your passport to get into the country. We'd still have a passport control office. We'd still keep a record of who was coming in. You can't have open borders. That doesn't make any sense. Communist governments all don't have open borders. right? They all have, you know, fences. They all have, I mean, if you say to an average person, I'm for open borders, they're going to say, what does that mean? That we just don't have a border, that anyone could just walk over? We don't keep track of? I mean, it's not a real policy, but you feel so super radical by saying it's not realistic. Another one, disarm the police. All right, that's one. Disarm the police or abolish the police. That's a good one. So all right. So what do we do? Right? You know, I mean, think about that. And when you really would press the abolish the police people about what they meant was, we want to create a society where we don't have the police. We have some kind of revolutionary people's organization that works on behalf of the people and enforces law on behalf of the people. Why don't you say that? Why don't you say you want the dictatorship of the proletariat? Why don't you say you want a socialist society? Why did you say abolish the police? That doesn't make sense, right? But if you say, no, we want a new society where the police serve the people, that makes sense. But you made it weird by saying, I want to abolish the police, and most people think you're crazy. And if you really press the open borders people, they don't mean we should immediately have open borders. They want to eventually create a world of vast abundance of wealth where borders are no longer necessary, right? They want to get to the higher stage of communism. Why don't you say that? Why are you saying open borders now? You sound crazy. And it's almost like they're going out of their way to sound crazy. And they create this atmosphere where if you don't sound as radical as them, they can denounce you. But it never occurs to them that you'd have to talk to people on planet Earth who aren't in your bubble, who, when you say abolish the police or you say open borders, you sound nuts, right? And that this is, so, it's like land back. What does it mean? If it means tribal sovereignty, I'm for it. If it means reparations to indigenous people, I'm for it. If it means deport all the whites, I mean, that's just not realistic, my friend. That's just not going to happen, right? I'm sorry, but, what was done to the Native American people was absolutely an injustice. And, the way their culture has been suppressed, the way they were just genocided and killed, horrendous. But the idea that we're just going to roll back the wheels of history and all the white people in America are just going to go over to Europe, and all the black people that were brought here in chains are all going to go to Africa, and then we just hand it back to the indigenous people. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen. And, maybe that doesn't fit with your sense of justice, but it's not going to happen, right? And so if I go around advocating that, I'm advocating something that's never going to happen. And that's craziness. And again, it doesn't make sense to most people if you advocate it. Kinky says, so happy for your national success, Caleb. We need 1,000 more of you. Well, thank you, Kinky. And I'm going to keep doing all that I can do, right? Because it's a daily struggle. It's a daily struggle. And you just got to keep pushing back. You got to keep pushing back. But anyone can join the show. We had a great call from Dan out in LA. It was great to hear from him. And now we're going to hear from, I promised you there'd be a clip from a Hollywood movie about, China fighting Japan in World War II. This is an actual Hollywood movie called Gung Ho, and you'll see that the communist methods are in the movie. Here we go.
What? Colonel! Well, I had an idea you'd show up.
Well, when I heard you was back, I just busted right in.
I'd have been so if you hadn't. Come on, sit down. Where was it last time, Manila?
Oh, Colonel, you forgot. China, the Yancey Patrol.
Right. Well, you know transport. I wasn't on the river long.
Yeah, I know. And me and the rest of the old gang could hardly believe it when we heard you quit the Marines.
Well, I felt bad about that, but I had to do it that way. I can talk about it now. You know where I went?
We heard you were sick and went back to the States, but that didn't seem like you.
Must have been a couple of Army guys.
Where did you go, Colonel?
I joined the Chinese Army.
Are you kidding, sir?
And not even the Chinese Marines.
What for?
Well, I could see this war with Japan coming. You didn't have to look far for that. I realized that our first line of defense would be China. So I decided to find out just what her war potential was, just how long she could hold out. I joined the Chinese 8th Route Army. Remember that march they made during the Civil War, 6,000 miles clear across the country?
Was they Chinese in the Civil War? I thought there was General Sherman marching along to... Oh, forgive me, sir. I wasn't trying to make no crack, honest. It's just that I don't read the papers past the funny page. Will you excuse me, sir?
Never mind transport. Anyway, that's all over. All the Chinese are united now against the Japs. I've been hearing marvelous things about the guerrilla tactics of the 8th Army. This is right after Shanghai. I made up my mind to find out about them. I couldn't go in uniform, so I went without.
Plenty of fighting, huh, sir?
Transport, you never saw anything like it. Just look at those half-armed, ill-fed peasants. They outmarched, outfought, outmaneuvered the Japs at every turn because they believed in what they were fighting for. Because every man had only one desire, to do his duty. Well, I learned a lot of things that are not in textbooks, and I came back to the States to tell about them. Then, Pearl Harbor, and here we go again.
I don't ask for nothing better, sir.
Transport, we're going to try out something new. Headquarters giving me a free hand. You'll see some fun before we're through.
I hope them Japs have got a sense of humor. They're going to need it.
I want you for my personal...
Hey, attention! Sir, the battalion is formed.
Take your post.
At ease. Sit down, boys, and make yourselves comfortable. The smoking lamp is lit. Boys, this is our first get-together, but it won't be our last. You probably wonder what this is all about. Well, I can't tell you now. You'll learn as you go along. But I can say this. You are to receive a course of training unique in the history of the Marine Corps. If you justify the effort to be spent on you, you may be able to point the way in which this tremendously difficult war in the Pacific can be won. Briefly, it can be won by teamwork, by trained men fighting together with the precision of a machine. But it's more than that. It must be a harmonious machine. Now you start with the fundamentals. And at the bottom of everything is self-discipline. You must start by casting out all prejudices. Racial, religious, every other kind. I want you to feel free to ask questions, even embarrassing ones. Come to me with suggestions. We're going to be more than officers and men in this. We're going to be comrades. What I eat, you will eat. Where I sleep, you will sleep. I will take you into my confidence whenever it's possible before going into battle. We'll have a meeting in which I'll explain our plans and objectives so that each of you can make a more intelligent contribution to the result. Afterward, we'll have another meeting to criticize the way in which the operation was conducted. We'll fight and endure and win together. Ahead of you lies a hard road. You'll often have bad food and very little of that. Many times your bed will be a muddy ditch. You'll march until you think you're exhausted and then be called on to start out again. To carry you through the rough spots before you, teamwork is needed. You'll have to help each other. The Chinese have a word for it. It is gung-ho. Gung to work, ho harmony. I propose it as our motto. Gung-ho. Come on, now give it to me.
Pearl Harbor is history now by 2 months. From 15,000 volunteers, the colonel has accepted about...
Yeah, that's a Hollywood movie about a commander or a Marine Corps guy who learns the 8th Route Army and the fighting style of Mao and brings it back to the U.S. Marines. And you know, there's many examples of that in Hollywood World War II history. I think there's 3 Hollywood movies, 2 of which I have seen, that were declared to be communist propaganda and basically outlawed after World War II. One of them is called Mission to Moscow, and it's Joseph Davies, who was the U.S. ambassador to the Soviet Union, went there during the Moscow trials, and it was about how Stalin defeated the Trotskyite infiltrators who were working with Japan and stuff. There's Mission to Moscow. And then there's another one called The North Star, which is written by Lillian Hellman. And it's about a Ukrainian village that gets invaded by the Nazis, and the people of the village, the communist young people of the village, fighting the invaders. The first 40 minutes of the film, or maybe the first half hour, are really hard to get through. It's really hokey and stupid. But once the Nazis invade, it gets to be a very, very serious movie. And it's very awesome. There's another one that I have never seen. I've never been able to find it. It's a musical. And it's called Through Russia. I have never seen it. I've never been able to find it. Now, there was a series of movies that they made that were to like educate U.S. Troops during the war about what the war was about. It's called Why We Fight, and they show it on the History Channel a lot. From what I understand, it's just shown on the History Channel. One of the Why We Fight films is called The Battle of Russia, and it's a pretty pro-Soviet film because the Soviet Union was the ally of the United States during the war. They were made to show to U.S. armed service personnel. So yeah, during that war, there was a lot of pro-Soviet and pro-Chinese communist material that was produced because, it was the Second World War and they were on our side. In fact, Edgar Snow, who's a writer that I really like, he wrote a book called People on Our Side. I think I have a copy of People on Our Side somewhere, which was a book that was written. It was about the various communist fighting forces around the world that were on the U.S. side during the Second World War. I've got a copy of it somewhere. It's called People on Our Side. It's by Edgar Snow. It's a pretty good book, and it got quite a bit of circulation during the Second World War. Edgar Snow ended up being the first American journalist to interview Mao Zedong. He wrote Red Star Over China, and I read Edgar Snow's writings when I was in high school. Him and Anna Louise Strong. In this upcoming book I'm working on, the Khrushchevism book, there's a lot about Anna Louise Strong in that book. She's a very, very important figure, most certainly. How about Dalton Trumbo's 30 Seconds Over Tokyo? I have never seen that. Right now, Dalton Trumbo, he was a Hollywood writer who was a member of the Communist Party USA. And he was put in prison because he wouldn't name names to the rest of the committee. And I actually really liked the movie they made about his life. They did a Broadway play that was like his letters to his sons and such. And then they did a documentary, and they ultimately made a Hollywood like fictionalized movie about his life, which I thought was pretty well made. Dalton Trumbo wrote the screenplay for Spartacus, which I've talked about many times, which was very much Howard Fast, the novelist, who was a Communist Party member, wrote a novel called Spartacus during the McCarthy period. And then Dalton Trumbo wrote the script for it. Dalton Trumbo also wrote the script for a Zionist film because the Communist Party supported Israel. And there's a film called Exodus, and he wrote Exodus, which is a Zionist pro-Israel film that kind of tries to sell Israel in a communist way, like it's a liberation struggle or something. So he wrote a Zionist propaganda film as well. But Dalton Trumbo, he wrote a movie called The Brave One, which is about it's about a Mexican boy who his favorite pet bull. His favorite bull gets taken to be in a bullfight, and so he goes to rescue the bull. And he goes through Mexico trying to rescue the bull, and it's about like the Mexican Revolution, and he learns about the Mexican Revolution and how the Mexican Revolution is tied in with Abraham Lincoln, and it's about low-income people in Mexico because Dalton Trumbo lived in Mexico. He fled to Mexico during the McCarthy period, and so he wrote the movie under a fake name. And it's a really low budget movie, but it's just about people in Mexico, basically, at the time, what Mexico was like in the 1950s and the kind of leftist tradition that, was a holdover from the Mexican Revolution that was in Mexican culture at the time. After after he wrote the movie, he wrote it under a fake name. And then he ended up winning best screenplay, but it was under a fake name. And it's the only Academy Award at the Oscar that was not accepted because the fake name that he wrote it under, he couldn't go accept the award because he was blacklisted. Johnny Got His Gun is an anti-war novel he wrote during the time period of the Pact, right? So 1939, the Moscow, or the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact was signed, the Non-Aggression Pact. And during that time, the Communist Party was very much promoting like kind of an anti-war message. And so he wrote this novel. It's a pacifist novel called Johnny Got His Gun. And it's about a soldier who wakes up in the hospital with no arms or legs. it's a particularly dark and sad novel. And he wrote it before World War II, when the communists were in the anti-war phase, before Pearl Harbor, before the Soviet invasion, during the Pact. It's particularly, and they made a Hollywood movie of it during the 70s. They made a Hollywood movie of Johnny Got His Gun. It's very dark, sad story. But Dalton Trumbo, I mean, I can forgive the Zionism because that was the confusion of the time, I guess. He didn't know. People still thought Israel. I mean, there was a lot of confusion about Israel in the 1950s and 60s among leftists. But aside from that, I mean, Spartacus, I've talked about Spartacus and the politics of the movie Spartacus. Spartacus is very much, it's about the Popular Front. And it's a very pro-communist film, and it was made almost as a diplomatic gesture to the USSR. I've talked about that on these streams before. The fact that this communist movie was made in Hollywood, the fact that JFK went to go see it. I mean, it was all very, very political. Spartacus is a good movie. It's vaguely anti-gay, which is like mildly funny. But like the villain, Marcus Crassus, is portrayed as a homosexual as part of why he's so evil, which that's not leftist politics in our time by any means. But it's, fascism crushing the republic and the alliance between the democratic bourgeoisie and the revolutionaries. And I mean, it's Kirk Douglas. It's an action movie, a lot of sword fighting. It was quite a popular film. It's very political. It's using the story of Spartacus to kind of make communist points about the Second World War and the rise of fascism. I think that's how I would kind of interpret Spartacus. And then, of course, there's the famous "I'm Spartacus," right? And that's a reference to McCarthyism, not naming names. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. I'm Spartacus. Right? But there you go. There you go. All right. Well, listen, folks, it's been fun. I'm glad to be here with all of you. We just continue to do these streams. But yes, if you can help me out, I'm going to go pick up the books from the printer this week on Wednesday morning. So if you can help me offset the costs, that would make my life a little bit easier. We have 1,000 of these we're picking up. So if you can help me offset the costs, that would be great. You can donate on the GoFundMe, send me $5, $20. You can also cash at me, Caleb Maupin 22. But the main thing is we need you to be there in Chicago. This will be the biggest event we've ever done by far. And if you go to one CPI event this year, go to the Chicago convention. And we are figuring out how to fill up that auditorium and how to have a mega anti-imperialist rally. And how to just do it and not get caught up in the bullshit and the competitiveness and the pushing and the shoving. How we can just do it. Just do it. Right? Just do it. So, yes. Dare to struggle, dare to win. This was a night I wasn't originally going to stream, but then Peter decided not to stream. And so I decided to stream. It's always better to stream. Always better to stream than not stream, right? And that is my attitude. Always better to stream than not stream. So thank you all. You all are great. I'm glad to be here with all of you. I think we're probably going to call it a night. I can't really think of anything else that needs to be said at the moment, but dare to struggle, dare to win. I guess we'll put on the closing music, and we'll be back soon. Maybe tomorrow night, maybe not, but we'll be back. We'll be back. All right. New upsurge in the struggle against U.S. imperialism is now emerging throughout the world. Ever since World War II, U.S. imperialism and its followers have been continuously launching wars of aggression. But the people of various countries have been continuously waging revolutionary wars to defeat their aggression. And while the danger of a new world war still exists, and the people of all countries must get prepared, revolution is the main trend in the world today.